Good afternoon. I'm Colleen Carroll Campbell. Welcome to Rome on the day Pope Francis entrusted his pontificate to Mary, the Mother of the Church. The new Pope made his statement a few hours ago. It came during his meeting with the full College of Cardinals in the Vatican's Clementine Hall. The gathering brought together both the 114 cardinals who had elected him Pope on Wednesday and also those non-electors who are over the age of 80. He told them that, quote, "One day we will contemplate the face of the risen Christ through the intercession of Mary, the Mother of the Church." He said that he entrusted his ministry to her maternal protection. Pope Francis also highlighted that most cardinals are not young men. The 76-year-old Argentinian suggested to them that old age was a time for peace, for prayer, and for handing on the Christian faith to younger generations. Following his address, the new Holy Father met individually with each of the cardinals, including, in this case, Cardinal Sean O'Malley of Boston. Well, another North American cardinal who was present at that papal address was Cardinal Thomas Collins of Toronto in Canada, and he joins me now. Great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
So glad to have you join us, especially on the heels of your first conclave. What was the experience like? I know you can't give us the inside scoop.
No, I can't. My lips are sealed. But no, it was just an awesome experience. A kind of a sense, you have a sense of all the people in the world praying for us. And you just sort of see the way in which this most profound act of the College of Cardinals it's just lifted up by the prayers of everyone. And I found the most moving moment personally in terms of my own participation. Well, and it may well be true for the other cardinals as well. It's when you write the name on the ballot, you fold it over, kind of a little card. You walk up with it held out so all can see, and then you stand before the Last Judgment of Michelangelo, and you say, "I testify, or I swear before Jesus Christ, who will judge me, that this person for whom I am voting is the one I truly believe should be the Pope." And then you put the ballot on the paten and you just drop it into the urn. I think that's just an awesome moment. You think, yes, Jesus Christ who will judge me. So you certainly, it concentrates the minds of the cardinals, I think, which is if they needed it at that point. So it's just truly an awesome experience.
And you say this out loud, don't you?
Oh, you do. It's written there, and you just, as you stand at the altar right in front of the Last Judgment, you hold up the ballot and you say that, and then you place it in, and then they're all gathered. And the one thing they always say, this is a very secret process. Well, you can find it on the Vatican website. Actually, we did exactly what's in the book. You know, it's not all that secret. I always say it's not secret. It's private, but it's not secret. It's quite anyone can tell what we did, but it's private, obviously, because it's a very profound moment in which we seek, with God's help, to discern who will be the Vicar of Christ on earth.
Well, when we heard the name of Cardinal Bergoglio, many of us, at least right here on this set, and I think around the world, were a little bit stunned. He was considered a leading contender last time around in 2005, but he was a bit of a surprise this time. What are some of the qualities you think your fellow cardinals saw in him? Well,
I think what we can see now, the world can see, is truly a man who is just a very humble, loving shepherd of souls. And I think people from his diocese have often spoken of that, how what a warm, loving presence he is, and how he brings Christ our Lord there. Christ crucified, as he said in the homily to us in the Sistine Chapel. And he has those human dimensions, the gifts of God that he has received. And I was getting a ride back from Casa Santa Marta back to where I regularly stay in Rome at the Casa del Clero, and I said to the taxi driver, "What do you think?" And he said, "Oh, uomo simpatico." And I think that's a pretty good description of it. Very down to earth and very loving. It's just a gentle, very holy man.
And what was your experience today, meeting with him in Clementine Hall?
It was wonderful. We were there. He gave, of course, the talk that you've already referred to, and then we just went up one by one. And I was thinking as we were doing that, we were in the very same place, the very same essentially program as what happened just a short time ago on the last day of Pope Benedict's time, when he moved to his time of prayerful retirement. And it was the same that we went up to meet him as well. And so there's a sense of these two very, very holy men. And each one who has exercised the ministry of Peter and one who is now beginning to exercise the ministry of Peter, two great servants of us all. So that was very touching. And so I went up to meet him, and we only, when you have a long line of people, you don't want to take much time. So I just wished him well, and I greeted him in the name of the people of my Archdiocese of Toronto and of all Canadians. I told him that we're praying for him, we're with him, we love him, and we'll support him in every way as he begins his ministry as successor of St. Peter.
And any sense of a connection he'll have with the people of Canada? Any special significance for them?
Well, I think that in my diocese, we have about 2 million Catholics in my diocese, a little less than that, but about 2 million. And we have people from Argentina, certainly, and we have many people from Latin America. Every Sunday we celebrate Mass in 37 different languages, and Spanish is certainly one of them, and also Portuguese, Italian. We have about 500,000 Italian Canadians in the diocese as well. That's probably the biggest single group. So his connection, he's an Italian background from Argentina. I'm sure he may, for all I know, many people have relatives in Toronto, and I don't know whether he does or not. I didn't ask him, but.
And one of your roles in Canada is you were helping with the organization of the 2002 World Youth Day,
which yes.
I attended, and very successful event,
yes,
very inspiring. And I thought when we saw our new Holy Father, Pope Francis, emerge on this balcony, two things struck me. One, crowd was extremely young. My husband was down there and said he felt old being in his 30s because everyone seemed to be under 30.
Yes.
And the second thing is just the warmth with which the young people embraced him. Do you think he's going to be able to make that connection at World Youth Day coming up in Brazil?
Absolutely. I'm sure he will. He's just a wonderful holy man, and that's what connects to people. I remember once I was in the diocese where I was at a seminary, and there's this old priest that left the seminary faculty. Actually, he's probably about my age, but he seemed pretty old to me at the time. And he would off into a parish, and he had all kinds of young people coming to his various catechetical things and all that, and he went to a meeting of the priests, most of whom were in their 30s or late 20s, and he said, I don't know what to do. You young priests must understand. I have about 300 people coming to my youth group, and what should I do and everything? And they said, if you have 300 people coming to your youth group, you tell us what to do. So I think that what connects to people, whatever age they are, is an absolute sincerity and authenticity and holiness. It speaks, and that age doesn't matter. This is what people at every age connect to, and we should all remember that. We don't divide according to different ages. So I think people recognize it. Well, you see this too in Pope Benedict and Pope John Paul. I remember at the Synod on the Holy Eucharist when Pope Benedict was there. This is a bit earlier in his time, and he'd be about 80 or 78 or 9. And this little 7-year-old, and he was just talking one-on-one, the 79-year-old and the 7-year-old, but they were both faithful Christians at different stages of the journey. And this, I think, we'll see this with Pope Francis as well.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Cardinal Collins.
It's a pleasure to be here anytime. Thank you.
When Pope Francis first emerged onto the balcony of St. Peter's on Wednesday night, the one question many people were asking was, who is this man? Well, EWTN Vatican Daily has been talking to someone who knows the new Pope very well.
Father Miguel Alderete is a priest from Argentina. He was in St. Peter's Square on March 13th, along with thousands of others, when he heard the name of his friend, Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio.
For me, it was a beautiful surprise. It's a great gift from God, and I think Francis will be a great gift from God for the Church.
Father Miguel has known Pope Francis for many years from their work together in Buenos Aires. He says that the Pope has always been close to the poor, not only in prayer but in person.
He's a Pope who is a gaucho, a Pope who is going to be close to the people, a Pope who is going to take the Church to the streets and to everyday people, a Pope who is close to the poor.
Pope Francis is going to be a Pope who speaks with gestures, according to Father Miguel, continuing the legacy of his predecessors.
There won't be any changes to the doctrine. On the contrary, his pontificate will be an affirmation of what we know and what we Catholics have to defend. For example, an important issue that Cardinal Bergoglio fought for in Argentina was the issue of life and the family.
When Father Miguel asked Bergoglio about the Conclave of 2005 and the rumors that he was a frontrunner, the Cardinal didn't flinch.
He told me, look, you know I can't talk about that, so whoever said that is responsible. But the truth is that when I heard his name on the balcony on St. Peter's, I thought there must have been some truth to those rumors, and that the cardinals must have remembered something from that conclave. And now he's our Pope.
Joining us today are our two resident pundits, Canadian priest Father Raymond D'Souza and historian Dr. James Hitchcock, and we also have with us the Jesuit priest Father Lawrence Herrera of Rome's North American College. Father Lawrence, I'm going to start with you. We've finally got a Jesuit on the program to explain to us our first Jesuit Pope. First, what's the mood among Jesuits? I know that's a big question, so at least among the Jesuits you know.
Well, I saw a young Jesuit today who works at the Radio Vatican, and he had a great big smile on his face today and an extra kick in his step, and he certainly seemed happy, and I think that every Jesuit around the world is probably a little proud and happy today, and maybe still like me in a bit of shock, I think.
And what do you think this new Jesuit Pope, what can he bring from the Jesuit charism to the papacy?
Hopefully a deep sense of discernment and a deep sense of friendship in Christ. And I would say, you know, in that sense, what I already see to me is a great continuity between Pope Francis and his predecessors, really. It's really quite amazing to me. And I think it's very reassuring, and I'm very happy about it. It's sort of a proof of the Holy Spirit at work.
And Jim, we know this is our first Jesuit Pope, and we talked a bit on the other night about how that may have something to do with what was always seen as the Jesuits sort of in service to the Pope. But is there any other reasons there haven't been more, and is this kind of creating a new mold for us?
Well, there's the kind of Jesuit legend in which they were accused or praised for doing all sorts of intrigues and things like that, which most of the time they didn't do it. But because of that image, I think that was one reason why Jesuits were not usually considered. They were supposed to also, according to the rules, turn down any appointment to a higher office. Then they would be commanded in obedience to accept. So it was, you just sort of assumed if you were a Jesuit you were not going to ascend into the hierarchy. And the Father used the term discernment, which I agree with very much. I talked last night about what I called holy pragmatism. I think the Ignatian spirit of discerning what the situation is, what does God want me to do, and then how should I go about doing it. That is so characteristically Jesuit.
Father Raymond, any thoughts on that?
Well, it means a great deal for the Jesuits. You know, one of the great failures of John Paul II's pontificate is he launched early on, about 30 years ago now, an attempt to reform and to sort of readjust the Jesuit leadership. It was one of the big failures of his pontificate, and it was sort of left untended. So perhaps Cardinal Bergoglio, SJ, Francis, not SJ, but Francis, may have some success with that. The Jesuit order is one of the most impressive phenomena in the whole history of the Church. It's fallen in a bit of rough times, and some of the Jesuit universities that people would know back in Canada or the United States are emblematic of that. So maybe the general reform or the general return to foundations that Francis seems to be speaking about will have a special resonance amongst the Society of Jesus. I mean, we would hope that, because the Society of Jesus is a very powerful force for evangelization, if we want to say the first or second evangelization, so we need them very much in the new evangelization.
Father Herrera's reference to a young Jesuit, I know a number of young Jesuits who I think will hail this appointment with great enthusiasm and will be willing to follow the Pope where he leads.
And Father Lawrence, you of course work at the North American College, so you're working with young seminarians every day. Obviously not Jesuits in that case, but what's your sense of how young priests and seminarians are going to receive our new Holy Father?
I think with very great enthusiasm, and I was really struck by that the other evening. We had a huge celebration when we came back, when the Cardinals came back, and the enthusiasm. They are a absolutely wonderful bunch of young men, and their faculty very much as well. It's a great institution, and I'm thrilled and privileged to work there. But I have to say, at the same time, I think that Pope Francis is probably going to be a pope who will comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And I think that,
in what sense?
In the sense that, you know, maybe even as Father Raymond is saying, you know, Jesuits who are just too comfortable may also need to hear his message. And I think that will be the way it will be in much of the Church, and it has been that way with Pope Benedict, and it's been that way with Pope John Paul. And I think I see a great, wonderful continuity here, and a great strength, and a tremendous humility that is very powerful and so aptly Franciscan, I must say.
Spoken by a Jesuit. Well, thank you so much, Father Lawrence Herrera, for joining us.
Thank you so much.
That's all for the moment. Well, we'll be right back after this break when we'll be joined by the Supreme Knight of the Knights of Columbus, Carl Anderson. So stay tuned. A new papacy, a timeless message, a historic setting. This was the procession of Pope Francis and the elector cardinals into the Sistine Chapel for Mass last night. It was there only 24 hours beforehand that those 114 men had elected him as the 267th Pope after only 5 ballots. Beneath the historic frescoes by Michelangelo, the new Pope reminded his brother bishops that the risen Christ was the cornerstone of the Church. In what seemed to be an unscripted homily, he said there was, quote, a fundamental need to proclaim Christ crucified. He added that if we walk without the cross, if we build without the cross, if we proclaim Christ without the cross, then we are not disciples of Jesus. One man who has been here in Rome to witness these historic days is Carl Anderson, the Supreme Knight of the Knights of Columbus. Carl, it's great to have you here.
Nice to be with you. Thank you.
Carl, tell us your reaction to this. What's the significance of the election of our new Pope Francis?
Well, I couldn't help thinking about 35 years ago, the election of Karol Wojtyła, the election of Pope John Paul II, and how that electrified the church in Eastern Europe, in Poland, and changed history. So we might have said 35 years ago that the future of the church depended in large measure on who was going to win the Cold War. And there was our Holy Father leading that whole effort. Now we find 35 years later, many people are saying the future of the church depends on what happens in the Western Hemisphere. And we have a Pope from the Western Hemisphere, from Latin America, who has the same, I believe, potential to electrify a vast renewal of Catholicism in our hemisphere. So to me, it's a fantastic event we're witnessing this week.
Now, there was a conference that the Knights helped put on, Ecclesia in America, really bringing together the idea of the one America, as Pope John Paul II used to say, as opposed to North and South America. Tell us a little about that conference and kind of how you think having a Latin American Pope is going to affect the way all the peoples of the Americas think about each other and their common identity.
Right. Well, we go back 10 years ago to Ecclesia in America, the Synod for America, in which John Paul II was talking about looking at our Western Hemisphere not as the Americas, but as one Christian continent that's interrelated. And so this conference in December of last year was to take a look at this 10 years later and what needs to be done to move forward, and especially looking at Marian devotion and Our Lady of Guadalupe as the key. So the Knights of Columbus, we're sort of a little bit ahead of time on this because over 130 years we've been working in the United States and Canada and Mexico, Cuba, Central America, and of course we have so many Hispanics now in the United States that this really for us is the key to the future, and we just see our new Pope, Pope Francis, is somebody going to be leading us in a greater understanding and commitment to interconnectedness. I think in the United States especially, we look east, we look west, to Europe, to Asia. We have to start looking more to the south and how we have a mutual destiny ahead of us. And so I guess I would say one more thing as a Knight of Columbus, standing there, listening to the new Pope on the balcony talk about charity, talk about brotherhood. I couldn't help as a Knight thinking, boy, this sounds like us. We have to really be there for him now as we go forward. And of course, the founder of the Knights, Father McGivney, son of immigrants to the United States. And here we have the son of immigrants to the Western Hemisphere, to Argentina, now leading our church. So that should give us pause about what we do with immigration, how we welcome newcomers among us, and how we incorporate them in a way that honors their tradition and builds up their faith, and the way we learn and benefit from each other.
And you've been a member of the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, and there's been a lot of talk since the election of Pope Francis already about this left-right division in the Church, and what does it mean to be a whole Catholic who embraces all of the Church's teachings. Do you think he's going to challenge Americans in a particular way to look at their faith more holistically?
Well, I certainly hope so. I think his very presence is going to do that, and I think it's a false dichotomy. In the United States, we've been promoting bringing, if I can say, both these sides together, because there really is a uniformity. And we saw it just recently with Pope Benedict's last encyclical, Caritas in Veritate, in which he reaffirmed the anthropology, the vision of Humanae Vitae, as being central to an authentic Catholic economic vision. And so social justice and family values and pro-life, they're not opposed to each other. They're part of a same vision of the human person. And I think if you look at his experience as Archbishop in Buenos Aires, how do you fight liberation theology? You fight it by what he said yesterday. You understand the cross, you understand sacrifice, you understand brotherhood, you understand what it means to live and to love people who suffer and are in poverty. And you can't do that from afar. You have to embrace them and embrace their style of life. And so I think he has the potential really to bring greater unity in the Church. And I think when he does that, we will find a greater influence in our culture of Catholic values and Catholic witness, and an integrity of witness that doesn't compartmentalize people, but reintegrates what it means to be an authentic Catholic witness.
And what do you think it is about having a pope who wears his old brown shoes on the balcony or takes the bus to work in Buenos Aires that may help introduce messages about the sanctity of human life and of family in an American context that may help us, in other words, advance that message? Is there a link, in other words, between the poverty and the evangelical witness there?
Yes, I think so. And I think especially when you see so much criticism of the Church as a place of privilege, to have a leader who really exemplifies on a daily basis and in ways that everyone can see and understand that we're called to service. So I think we talk about the Pope as being the servant of the servants of God. We have somebody who I think is going to demonstrate that in new ways, and we can all learn from that. We're not called to be served, we're called in solidarity to serve those in need. And of course, if I can say again for the Knights of Columbus, it's something we really try to do is our principles of charity and principles of unity and solidarity and fraternity. So I think we're all called to this, and he talks about the Christian life as a journey. So maybe we don't all ride the bus on the journey, but you know, it's traveling together and helping each other and understanding that we're united in a way. And so if we have that kind of sense of unity, these kinds of divisions between social justice and family or pro-life or the rich or the poor, we can overcome those. We have to overcome those. And that's how we build a Catholic culture.
One issue that's of particular interest, as you know, to Americans is this whole fight over the HHS mandate. And there's a lot of concern about religious liberty right now in the United States. This is an issue, as we understand, that our Holy Father dealt with when he was Archbishop of Buenos Aires. And some of the same kind of religious liberty questions coming up, and the same conflicts with the state, especially over questions of human life, nature of marriage, that sort of thing. Do you see any gifts that he's going to bring that can help Americans in their stand they're making for religious liberty in the United States? Any leadership he might provide, example, anything he especially can offer in that sense?
I think we see in his example a forthrightness, courage, determination, clarity, an insistence that Catholics as a people have integrity of witness, not just talk the talk, but actually walk the walk in a sincere way, an ability to speak truth to power. And I think that is coming out of a system in Latin America where they've had real experiences with dictatorship and had to face that and deal with it, and not compromise as they're coming through this. It's really a lesson for us too, the HHS mandate, because the danger there is we adopt a very, very narrow understanding of religion, the freedom to worship. You can worship, as the Lord says, you can pray in your closet in private. But we in America have understood the freedom of religious expression, to live your religious faith. And so that's where the real, and to be a witness, you have to have that freedom. And so that's, I'm afraid, a struggle that's going to intensify. And if he's telling us that to be a Christian means not abandoning the cross, then I think he's telling us what we have to be prepared to do as Catholics. And I don't see the cross as compromising. I see the cross as uncompromising.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me, Carl Anderson.
No, great to be with you. Thank you.
And thank you, Father Raymond D'Souza and Dr. Jim Hitchcock. We're out of time. That's all for now, but thank you for watching EWTN Vatican Daily. I'm Colleen Carroll Campbell. Join us next time. Now back to Doug Keck in Birmingham. Doug?
Very good. Thank you very much, Colleen. That's another edition of Vatican Daily live from Rome. We're back here in our EWTN studios. Just a reminder, if you missed any portion of that program, you can see the encore of EWTN's Vatican Daily from Rome, encoring tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time with Colleen and her whole team. And, of course, we've got the Pope Francis meeting with the Cardinals that happened earlier this morning, encoring today at 1 p.m. Eastern for those just getting up. That's the Pope Francis meeting with the Cardinals. You won't want to miss that today at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Just a reminder, check our website to find out the times in your time zone. And also tomorrow, we have an event. Pope Francis has an audience for journalists and media. We will be covering it. Tom Nash and I will be here in studio. And that is Saturday morning at 5:45 a.m. Again, Eastern Time, encoring at 2 p.m. Don't miss it. Pope Francis audience for journalists and media. That's on Saturday. Then on Sunday, we've got the Angelus with Pope Francis, his first one, Sunday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That's the Angelus. And then we have the Mass for the inauguration of the pontificate of Pope Francis. Look for it Tuesday, March 19th, live, 4 a.m., complete coverage. Encoring twice more that day at 6 p.m. Eastern, and then at midnight. That's the inauguration Mass. And locally, at least locally in the States, we've got a Washington event, a Mass of Thanksgiving for the election of Pope Francis from the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. Also on Tuesday, that will be March 19th at noon Eastern Time for that Mass from the Basilica. So stay with us now for EWTN's programming. And coming up, we have our Pope Francis meeting with the Cardinals coming up later today. So look for that. Stay with us as our Rome coverage continues through the inauguration on Tuesday. I'm Doug Keck.